Okay, so let's. So we're talking about Midah of Nikios, right? Which is chapter 10, and we're focusing on the Avera of Gezel, right? So let's just quickly kind of recap. So in the previous, we're in chapter 11. In previous chapter, he told us that the Chazal and Basra tell us that most people are guilty in Gezel. A minority of people are guilty in Arayas, and everybody is guilty with Avak Lashon Har. Right? So now that he's drilling down to the details of the Prote, Midas and Nikir, so then he's drilling down based on that map, right? That's number one. Number two, so he told us that anything that the nature of a person wants more, then he's more likely to rationalize, right? And then he gave us a list of sub-lavim that are related to the lav of Gezel, right? And then he said that even though people don't intentionally want to transgress the lav of Gezel, but they still transgress it in different ways. Okay, and so he spoke about. So overall, he's going to talk about 4 different examples that people transgress, and that is improper competition, right? Which is loisasig gvul, right? Going into somebody else's. Wait, let me actually backtrack for a second. So what is the essence? What is Gezel? The essence of Gezel is coming in possession of somebody else's property, right? So you could obviously come and take somebody else's property. That's one way to come in possession of somebody else's property. But you could also, if you took away somebody's business, that's taking away his property, right? If you were an employee and you did not produce as much as you could have produced, that's like taking away somebody else's property. If the one we're going to focus on today, I know, if you overpriced, right, overcharged somebody, that's also a way to come in somebody else's property, right? So these are different ways to dispossess somebody of their money or property, right? So the first one he told us was improper competition. Right, improper competition. And the next one that he focused on was employee. He mostly focused on being a good employee, right? And then he told us it's where when it comes to an employee, that's where he told us that when it comes to Gezel, a person does not get an atonement on Yom Kippur unless there is a mechila from the person involved. Number one. Number two, even if a person chooses his time to do a mitzvah during his work hours instead of focusing on the work, that mitzvah actually becomes an avera, right? It's a mitzvah above avera, and mitzvah cannot, and it's even worse because then kateger becomes an anger, right? Good. That's it, right? And then he told us that okay. So let's not get some more. Okay. So let's start again. I don't know if we went very fast last time through. I know, so I want to pick that up again. I have that on page 181. I'm going to start back a little bit from page 181. Even though we did much further than that, right? Okay. So anyways, Re'ei no be'inyan I know, right? So I know is what? Is overcharging. Is overcharging. So Re'ei no be'inyan I know kama nokel hu le'odem lehispatois, how easy it is for a person to be enticed v'likoshel and then to stumble. Because it would appear to him that it's proper for him to make an effort to make his schora, right, his products look good, right? Marketing, advertising, right? That seems a proper way of doing business. right? So no. So what's the problem? So what's the problem with Eino? What's the problem with overcharging? So the problem with overcharging is that if you charge him more than the market price, then again you're dispossessing him of his money, right? That's still under the compartment of Gezel. So therefore, next step, if you oversell, in other words, right, if you market your product so well that a person is willing to pay a higher amount, that's I know, right? So it's counterintuitive. He says it's my. It seems intuitively it seems like I should try to sell my product for the highest price possible. So, I mean, he doesn't go into the details of Eino but Eino doesn't apply to everything, right? Eino applies to really specific things that do have a market value, right? So we're not saying, I don't know. Again, it's very hard for me to find an example. But if something that's has a market value of a, whatever it is, $10 per pound, and he sells it, he says this is the best thing ever for $20 a pound, or forget $20 a pound, for even $12 a pound, right? $12 a pound. That's going to be Eino, because he overcharged him, right? He made it sound that it's better than it is. That's why a person paid $12 a pound. So that's Eino. He dispossessed him of $2. Okay. So let's continue. Yeah. So it seems intuitively, it seems like we should try to sell market our products. In the eyes of men, so I could make as much money from my work. I want to convince. I want to speak to the heart of the buyer. So he should be willing buyer. And they say regarding this, yesh zoris v'niskar. There is a person who is industrious, and therefore he will profit. Right? So it sounds like it's a good thing. V'yad charutzim tiyasher. In the hand of the diligent will bring prosperity. Amnam lo yidaktek v'yishkol masav harbe. Im lo yidaktek v'yishkol masav harbe. However, if a person does not carefully weigh and refine and analyze his actions, hine tachas chita yetze choyach. Under the chita, instead of a wheat, yetze choyach, he will get a thorn. Okay, meaning the action that he's trying to do, which is to sell to the best of his abilities, will end up a thorn, meaning will not end up an avera, right? He'll pick up with the sale, he'll also pick up an avera, right? Now, with this, I'm assuming right now that with this mashal, tachas chita yetze chayach, it seems to me that as long as the selling practices are going to be within, so to speak, the kosher confinement of kosher practices, right? So then it would be a chita, meaning it's great. It's a great thing. Meaning kosher selling practices are, I don't want to say avodas Hashem, but it's almost like avodas Hashem, because you're doing the right thing. You are being industrious. You are helping. You're creating parnasa for yourself. You're feeding your family. Doing all wonderful things. So as long as the act of selling is confined to halachic framework, right, boundaries, then that's fine. Not only is it fine, it seems like it's encouraged. It's a good thing to do. Okay, so but if he doesn't, but the problem is that it requires a lot of analysis to make sure that where do you draw the line between overselling, underselling, etc. Now, okay, we'll see. I'm gonna have a hard time on a lot of these things, but let's keep going. So what's the choyach? What's the thorn? Ki yavar ba'avoino, because then he's going to transgress the sin of Eino. Asher was harno leho, because we have a negative commandment. V'lo yisoinu ish es amitoy, and a person should not wrong his friend. Now, again, they point out over here. Right, if you look at the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvahs under this pasuk of Isha Samitoy, you will see that it's talking about wronging somebody in speech, meaning insulting somebody and making somebody feel bad. Right? Okay, so they point out that it includes both, meaning that verbal eino and financial eino, may come from the same pasuk, right? It's just two different ways of wronging somebody. Okay, because like I know is like so the typical example of if somebody was a Baal Tshuva and you tell them, I remember the kind of sins you were doing, right? So that's making somebody feel bad. Okay. So v'omru zichronim levracha, and our sages said that filu l'ramay says a goy osir, even to trick a goy is also osir. I mean, what does that mean? Why is he putting that in there? Because in one of the pasuk it says leisoinu isha sochiv, or it's amito, even amito, whatever. The point is, it clearly the isser of eino, the way it's brought down in the Torah, it only applies to a fellow Jew, right? And we'll come back to this point. I'll try to come back to this point. But he's saying, but even though the straightforward eino only applies to a Jew, but it doesn't mean that you should, so I feel the Ramas is a goy, so you still cannot include, misleading selling practices even to a non-Jew, right? So just understand that both of these connected. Why I'm misleading selling, meaning everything has a price, right? Let's say I have a defective car, right? I have a lemon that I want to sell. It also has a price. It's worth $1,000, right? If I don't disclose its defect, I can sell it for $10,000, right? So those two things are really two sides of the same coin, meaning overcharging and undercharging is also directly related to how am I presenting the features of this product.
Me undercharging the guy.
If it's right, because I know it goes both ways. It's really we're focusing on the seller, but I'm saying I know it goes both ways. Right. If a buyer, makes it make it look bad, right? And so he says, "For what am I going to buy this piece of junk? It's not worth $10,000. Look at this and look at that, right?" And he brings down the price lower than it really is. So that's also a problem of eino, right? So. So ukroksiv she'iris Yisrael yasu avla, and the pasuk says again. This is already more. What's the word? Hashkafik, right? Remember we were talking about that. In a certain sense, Nikias still focuses on plain halacha, meaning is it even deraisa? I would say is it straight out a very transgressing, or are you not transgressing? Over here, she'iris Yisrael yasu avla, v'lo yidabru kozav v'lo yimotz b'fihim loshen tarmis. Right? He's like expanding a little bit. Eino to not just the avera of overcharging, but also to the midas, which is really, again, he's going to have a separate section where he's going to focus on midas. Right over here, he's focusing really on, is it gezel or is it not gezel? The definition of gezel is dispossessing somebody that they should have. This pasuk is not really, it is, this first part, lo yasu avla, they don't do avla, which is like cruelty. Cruelty is, I guess, in this context, would be dispossessing. V'lo yidabru kozav, by speaking falsehood. V'lo yimotz b'fihem loshen tarmis. Good. V'chein omru, and similarly, they said in Bamitzia, ein mefarkesin es hakelim hayesharim, right? We do not spruce up old utensils, right, to make them look shiro kechadoshim. They should look like new. Right? If you don't sell refurbished merchandise and not disclose that it's refurbished merchandise, so you can charge, right? If you say that it's refurbished, you can only charge one price. If you don't say that it's refurbished, you can charge another price, right? Again, very common, probably. If I'm a seller, right? If I'm a seller and somebody returned to me a product, right? It's very tempting to just say, "Listen, it looks good. Nothing happened to it.
Put it back on the shelf.
Put it back on the shelf, right?" So again, I don't know what the Gdorim are, practically speaking, but but I don't know. Maybe according to the Gemara's understanding, maybe it is new. Just because the guy opened the box, really, what happened to it? Okay, so he broke the sticker on the box. Big deal, right? On the other hand, sometimes they come back in a year and and pretend like nothing ever happened to it. In any case, so you can't make them look as good as new. You can't mix fruits, even new and new. And we spoke about this last time. I feel so bedinner. But I feel yofa dinner with trisis lo yorvim karim so bedinner. Right? You can't even sell them at a lower price when they're mixed up. Right? Because because over here it says because somebody may prefer. You have to be. The bottom line is this: you have to disclose all of the information, even though you say it's better information. Sometimes somebody wants specific, lower quality product, and you have to disclose that product. Okay, so and then kol oise ele kol oise oval. This is all an example of somebody who does this, is somebody who does cruelty. So again, it also explains this type of action is called 5 names: oval, sonui, meshukatz, chayrim, ta'eva. All different disgusting things, right? All different disgusting things. So corruption. And this is where maybe the oino maybe is related to financial wrongdoing, and speech is similar because it still hurts the person's nefesh. There's an emotional. The person is emotionally connected, perhaps, to his items. When you take it away from him, that you're hurting him. So so even a minor what's the word, dispossession, like a shava pruta, is still a major sin. Right? A major sin, despite a minor dispossession. And they said, that rain does not stop, but rather is a result of the sin of Gezel. And they also said, even though you have a box full of sins, right? The person comes in full of sins, which sin starts out making the most noise, so to speak, the most incriminating. Kulam, more than any of them. Gezel, that's Gezel. But Doramabul anechtam gzardinum elala Gezel. And also similarly, Doramabul, we know that their din was not sealed rather than by Gezel. So over here, the last 2 examples are very interesting, right? Because the last 2 examples, he says, Kupo Melea Avoidness. You have a box full of sins. Which one starts out causing the trouble? That's Gezel. By Doramabul, what do you say? Which one is the chesima? Which one was the seal? That's the end. That's the conclusion. That was also Gezel. So the beginning of the incrimination is from Gezel, and the end of incrimination is also from Gezel. So why is that? Why is it both the beginning and the end? I mean, simply we could say it's okay. So it's so pervasive, it's so important. But I think there's probably more to it than that.
Because it requires mechila. Like how the court cannot decide without the as a person affected. There is nothing can be done. You can't cover it by intentions, whatever.
Right. Meaning it's hard. It's a hard problem. It's not a soft problem. It's a very hard problem.
No matter how fair judgment is, we have good excuses to do that. But without mechila, nothing can be done. So
Right.
That's the story.
Right. Before the restitution, we can't have no further conversation is possible.
Yeah. You must also have good extension, have good excuses, like he had to do it, but you have personal affected without that.
Right. I hear that. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. V'im toimers. Now this is where we left off last time. V'im toimer v'lvovecha. Now if you say in your heart, wait, why in your heart? I don't know. But if you say in your heart, what are you going to say in your heart? Ve'eich efsher lonu. How is it possible for us that we should not make an effort in our business? right? To appease, right? How could we not be? How's it possible for us not to make an effort to persuade, right, our friends on the sale and its value?
Right.
How is it possible? Now, there's a key word here that I think is very beautiful, right? If you listen carefully, what does it say? How is it possible? What's the question? How is it possible that we should not make an effort in our business dealings to persuade our friends on the sale and its value? Right? So I think it's already really, what's the word? Foreshadowing to part of an answer, right? In other words, all of these, if you look at the lavim, again, if you look at the negative commandments, like loisoni ishasachev, right? Don't overcharge your friend or your brother, right? Or amisa, your nation, right? There's a constant stress in all of these of brotherhood, right? And as we'll see from ribis, right? Ribis, we know ribis is interest. Interest in itself is not such a terrible thing. Certainly to us, in a modern mind, doesn't seem like such a terrible thing, right? But the point is that you don't charge your brother interest, so all Jews are supposed to treat each other like brothers, like friends, right? So when we're talking about selling, buying and selling, so it's a question is, the perspective should be, this is your friend, this is your best friend. How are you going to sell it to your best friend, right? Are you going to pump it up in order to overcharge him as much as possible, or are you going to try to sell it because you want to sell it, but you would want to charge a fair price, right? So that's, I think, part of this equation, right? So but how is it possible? How is it possible that we should not make an effort to try to market this product, right? That's the question. So he says, Chiluk Godel Yesh Bedover. There's a huge difference in the matter. Meaning there's going to be a line of demarcation. What's this line of demarcation? Now this I'm going to have a very hard time with, but let's listen what he says. Ki kol mashehu lehareis es hakoinim amitas tuva chayfetz v'yofyoi. Anything that is intended to show the buyer the true positives of the object and its beauty, and I'm trying to translate as literally as possible, right? If the intention is kol ma, any effort shehu lehareis, to show hakoinim, buyers, amitas tuv hachefetz, the true good of the object v'yofyoi and its beauty, hine haheshtadlus hahu toiv v'yosher. That type of ishtadlus is good and yosher and straight. Okay, so tov v'yosher are very powerful words, right? It's not, that is fine. That's okay. That's kosher. He didn't use the words tov v'yosher means it's great. It's tov v'yosher Hashem. We say God is good and straight, right? We don't say tov v'yosher on anything, I think. So in other words, this goes back to that idea of chita, right? That good business practices is a good thing, right? Buying and selling, economic activity is a great thing. Fair buying and selling is wonderful. He benefits, you benefit. Both people walk away. It's a win-win. He wants the object. You need to sell. You need to get money. It's an even trade that both people walk away having benefited, right? So, and obviously you should show the person the features and what makes it worth what it's worth, right? There's nothing wrong with showing the person what it is really worth. So what's wrong? Whatever is considered to cover the blemishes or the defects of the object, eino ela oino, is nothing but oino ve'osur, and it is forbidden. V'zeh klal godol, and this is a great principle, be'emunas hamasa v'hamatan, in business with integrity. This is the general principle of business with integrity. If you're focusing on the real features and positives of the object, good. If you're focusing on covering up the bad, not good. Okay, I mean, face value, okay, logical, makes sense. Obviously, if you're focusing on the strengths, right, and not what's the word? Not covering up the blemishes, right? That makes sense. On the one hand. On the other hand, so what's the potential problem? The potential problem is that people are not human psychology is a little bit funny. I mean, I don't know how to say this, but people are not always rational. All right, this guy Dan Ariely. I don't know if you ever heard of Dan Ariely. I happen to like the guy very much. This Israeli guy was a professor in like Duke University or somewhere, and he has a bunch of books out. One of his is called something like Rationally Irrational or something like that, something along those lines. But basically, his whole research is into the kind of irrational behavior that humans have, right? So people tend to, again, I don't know, an example, I remember one example is, if you're trying to sell somebody, right? And let's say you have two, packages, right? You have two packages. Let's say one is a $50 package and a $70 package that you're offering, right? If you then offer another package that is really totally useless, nobody wants that package, and you charge for it, let's say $150, a useless package. Now instead of presenting two packages, you present three packages, right? One is like totally overpriced garbage package, and then two reasonable package. Something like the sales numbers increase like crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So again, like simple things, simple things. Meaning, that's one. Again, I'm just throwing out an example, but other example, just sometimes, if you there's no perfect product, right? There's no such thing as a perfect product. Every product has some positive features and negative features. Some people get very annoyed with the iPhone for whatever reasons, and they get so annoyed by certain features, they just switch to whatever, Android, and vice versa. Some people are annoyed by Android and they switch to iPhone. Meaning, but if you present it in a way where those negative features that I don't like, made small, made insignificant, you could, or you come to love it and you come to enjoy it. Meaning, it's not like, not saying it's like a defect. Everybody knows, okay, the car doesn't start. Okay, that's an obvious defect. Or the car, transmission faulty, whatever you make up. Those are obvious, very objective defects. But there are some very subjective defects. And if you sell it well enough, a person will focus more on the positive and disregard the negatives. And so, in a certain sense, then it becomes a fair market value, right? Does he mean, and so that is that okay according to him? Meaning, or does he mean, no, you have to be
explicit.
You have to be like, listen, let me tell you why this is not such a good thing. Once you focus it, once you put a limelight on some of the defects, person will start thinking twice. Maybe it's not good for me. Maybe right.
But doesn't he say that it's something that is made to conceal the defect? Right? If you make a conscious effort to conceal.
Well, yes, I am making a conscious effort to conceal. I'm trying to minimize the defects. What's wrong? Because what I'm saying is that once you minimize those defects, then for you, those defects will actually be smaller. But once you shine a flashlight on them, you'll be like, whoa, start thinking twice. I never thought about this. Wow, this is really bad. I'm sure I've experienced this myself. I don't know. When you start overthinking something, it becomes a problem. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Like anything in life, there's no simple rule of thumb that you could like program into a computer and says, okay, if it's a defect, we're not robots. If we were robots, programmable robots, then none of this avodas Hashem would matter, right? Mm-hmm. So the point is that not every case is going to be clear cut as he, sounds like. But I guess he's giving you a general principle to figure out how to start thinking about this. Okay, fine. But I think again it goes back to this thing that I said before, is that chavereinu, right? Is that we have to treat a business, especially when we're dealing with the Jew or our brothers, we have to focus on that this is our brother, and anytime we are overcharging him, that means we are dispossessing him of his property. And the question is it rightfully dispossessed, rightful dispossessal, that he benefits and I benefit, or in the end of it, it's I'm ripping him off, and and he's just kind of getting along. Okay, let's move on. So that's not even talking about midos, right? Meaning not midos character traits, but midos the measurements, right? When you weights and scales. That's beferish says that it's this disgusting, despicable thing. That the punishment for midos is even worse than the punishment for Arias. Again, they point out over here. Wait a minute, it's worse. Arias is koris, and midos is not koris, right? So again, it goes back to this idea of tshuva, and that it's much more difficult, because once you messed up with midos, you overcharged who knows how many people and how many sales, and how much you have to go back and figure out how many times you ripped him off. Was it this much, half a pound, point? It's complicated. Okay, so v'omru hasiton mekanech midosav achas l'shloshim yom, that a wholesaler has to wash his midos once every 30 days. Why is that? Now, this is an interesting phrase. Why is that he shouldn't, that they should not become diminished? What does that mean? I don't know how to translate this.
Makes sense.
The what?
You slap them around, you hit them on the
here.
so
that the scales do not lose their accuracy through inattention, and in doing so, he avoids punishment.
Well, what is it? So of course it says so that's not a literal translation. Literal translation should they should not lose out, become chaser.
Yeah, so you have stones that are pounds, you're hitting all those things. It's a piece of chapo. It's not pound anymore. It's weightless. So when I put a one scale, produce the other one, it's evens, but it's no longer pound. It's a little bit less.
So, but mekanech means clean.
Oh, clean? Clean? I don't know why is it clean. If they don't, they would have weighed more. So then
the whole scale cleans his scales every 30 days. Why is this so? So that the scales do not lose their accuracy through inattention.
Unless if you have both sides, it's like one door is the other one, and does no. This is even
right.
clean.
The one he puts the meat, and the other one was the weights. The meat, the meaty scale collects all kind of leftovers.
No, I'm saying if the weights weigh more than if the weights weigh less.
We're talking about the weights, or we're talking about the scale.
Well, the scales has two sides, right?
Right.
Yeah.
One has the weights, and the other one
let's
has
say
the
this was supposed to be a pound weight,
Yeah.
right? But now there's stuff stuck to it.
Yeah.
So this, let's say, 1.5 pounds weight now.
So that's good. So you're
Right.
so you're not stealing. You actually
Why?
you give away extra.
No.
Yeah, because you want to balance. If you weight was supposed to be pound, not pound and a half, you balance.
Right.
So
that's not good.
Why not? You give extra
All
to
right,
the
I
guy.
understand. All right, no.
Well, I think he cleans the other side, the side of the scale that contains the produce.
Yeah, so that's more likely. Because the one side we use for weights, it's probably clean, and the other one for products got dirt and everything on it, so it became like.
Over here they explain. So they explained that over there they're talking about liquid scales, liquid containers. So that there might be some dirt inside the liquid container that dried up becomes part of the wall, and therefore he gets less liquid. That's what it's talking about. I see. Okay.
It's the measure, the pound.
No. Let's say I sell you wine, right? I sell you whiskey,
okay.
right? And I sold you a gallon of whiskey, but in reality, the walls became thicker from constant use. So So I'm selling you less than a
Okay.
gallon
Okay.
of whiskey. Right? So, fine. So that's that. That makes sense. Okay, they should not, fine. And he should not be punished. Why is he being punished? Because by mistake right, it's below das.
Yeah, so
Right.
It's below das. He didn't
Yeah, but
know.
he didn't know he should have cleaned it.
They should have, right? So he's getting punished for not cleaning
Right.
it.
For
Meaning he has to realize that he may inadvertently cheat his customers, and therefore he has to take preventative measures from cheating his customers.
right. He wasn't careful enough,
Right.
and I don't know.
Right. So again, so over here,
She
yeah, we
was
definitely
key.
see how far a person has to go to prevent inadvertently cheating his customers. Okay. Fine. Then he finishes off. Then he says, "Kol shekain, certainly, as kol shekain avoin haribis, certainly the sin of ribis, shegodol hu kekofer v'lekei Yisrael chas v'chalila, because it's as great as somebody who denies the God of Israel. Ribis is so bad; it's as if a person denies the God of Israel." Okay. V'omru zichronim levracha, and our sages said, "Al haposuk b'neshech nosan v'sarbis lokach v'chai lo yichya." Right? If somebody did this ribis, he shouldn't even live. She'eina chai l'tchias hamesim, that may not even live to see tchias hamesim. Why? Ki hu v'avok shaloi meshukatz u'mutoyev b'einei Hashem. Because it, and even avak shaloi, even its dust, is disgusting in the eyes of Hashem. Now he says, "Ve'eni roy tzorich laharich b'zeh." I don't see any need to expand on this. Shekvar eimosoi mutelas al kol ish Israel, because its fear already is laying on every Jewish man. Okay, so two things we see from that statement. One sees that he's only focusing on the things that are problematic in his time, right? That's why he decides that he's not going to focus on ribis too much, right? Even though I think nowadays I don't think that's the case, right? Nowadays he would focus on ribis maybe more than anything else, because the problems of ribis are very commonplace and very constant, because we're a modern financial system. Okay, but I'm so interested in credit cards and mortgages, and all these problems arise in, like, let's say if somebody takes a loan in somebody else's name, that's a problem, even though the other person is paying the interest rate. But if the loan is in somebody else's name, that's as if that person took the loan and then gave it to him, and so he's just an intermediary. So that's also a potential problem. So when it comes to ribis, there's a lot of potential problems in today's world. Not to mention that we don't always know who you borrow from this person, from this bank, but you find out that really the originator of the loan is some other bank, and maybe that's a Jewish person. You never know. So there's so many problems along the way that ribis nowadays I think is very problematic. Okay, let's keep going. Amnon klala shel davar. So now it goes back to the summary. Just like the desire for money is great, just like the desire for money is great, so too its michsholos, its stumbling, are great. Wait, let's go back for a second to that again, that statement with ribis. Right? Why does he want to spend time on ribis? Because a mosa imutelis, right? Because the fear of ribis is already lying on every person. One second, what does it got to do with fear? Our rationalization. Isn't the whole thing is that I desire money and I'm going to rationalize? The answer is, right? So it's a scale, right? In other words, the antidote to my desire is the fear, right? If there's a strong fear being an antidote to my desire, so then therefore my rationalizations are also less likely. I'm less likely to rationalize if I have something that's pushing me not to rationalize. So if a person has a strong fear of that sin, he's less likely. So right, the more the desire, depending on also how much is the fear, as we'll see, like avak lashon hara, right? Avak lashon hara, well, everybody's guilty of avak lashon hara. Others not, the desire is not so great. You know, what's the benefit from avak lashon hara? The answer is, but the fear is also not so great, right? Ribis, the desire is great, but the fear is also great, right? So therefore, you know, fine. So again, let's go back here.
There's a problem with ribis also. Back then it was only the business available. Yeah, I know it's not from Jews, you're from Goyim, but if you write too much, you're gonna backfire. So we're gonna take the book. Oh, look, you have double standards. So let's say, but keep quiet.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to stop yourself, you know.
Right. I mean, practically speaking,
Yeah.
forget. I don't think that's what he's saying, but I hear what you're saying.
But yeah, I also wouldn't write. In those days, I wouldn't write too much. But that's what Jews had to do. Like even as only business was available, pretty much.
I'm not sure if when Ramchal lived, it was such a big deal anymore.
He was
in the 1700s.
But he was in Italy. Yeah?
He started out in Italy.
Yeah,
Italy by 1700s, the ribis business also already dried up, I think.
Yeah, my history is little.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, but I think so. Meaning, once the Medicis came in and the Italians started their own, slowly, they figured out their own way of what you call it, and they used Jews for like more like pawn shop type of ribis, and ribis for the benefit of the poor, not so much for the. I think so. Again, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways. Amem klolo shel dover, k'moy shechem das hamomon rabba. Okay, I don't know if there's a place to talk about. There's different words for desire in the Hebrew language, right? Chemda, taiva, chayfetz, right? Chafetz, tiyuv, chuka, cheshek. There's many different words that mean desire in Hebrew. So chemdas, I mean, the Gra says in their Siliyahu that chemda is more connected to money. But I don't know, and taiva is more connected to znos. But I don't see how that works out, because there's loy sachmoid eishes re'ehu, right? Don't desire your friend's wife, right? Loy sachmoid and loy sisava beis re'ehu. So it's kind of switches. Okay, I'm not sure. Anyways, I think the Malbim said that chemda is for something that's in front of you, and taiva is for something that's more like not in front of you, meaning it's more like imagined. Taiva is more like imagined desire that comes from the nefesh, from the soul of a person, and chemda is like, ooh, wow, that's nice, I want that. Okay, anyway, so chemda's moment, Rabba, the chemda, the desire for money is great. Kain mechshuloisav rabim, so too the stumbling are many. Ukadeshi odem noki mehem be'emes, if a person wants to be clean, right, nikiyus, truly clean from these averos, iyun godol v'diktuk rav tzarich loy. He needs great iyun, right? So you got to go deep, right? V'diktuk, and you have to be nuanced. You have to go very fine. V'im nikom imenu, and if a person is able to cleanse himself from this avera, yeda, he should know shehigia kvar lemadrega gedola, that he already reached a great madrega, a great level. Why? Ki rabim yischasdu. Now remember, Chasidus goes after Nikiyus, right? Chasidus is a whole different section where a person really becomes a real, quote-unquote, tzaddik, right? In other words, the Chasid is much higher than a tzaddik. So Ki rabim yischasdu, there are many people that can become Chasidim, so to speak, right? Extra holy, right? Saintly. Ba'anofim rabim, and many branches, mi'anfei Chasidus, of Chasidus. U'be'inyan sinas habetza, but with regard the hatred of betza, I don't know how to translate betza, but basically betza is gain, but in a negative connotation, right? When again, illegal dispossession of somebody else's money, meaning my profit on through somebody else's back, right? Sinas betza lo yochlu lehagia el mechoiz shleimus. They were not able to reach to the station of perfection, right? So Huma she'omar tzofer hanamosi. This is what tzofer hanamosi says. Le'ivyoiv im oven biyodecha harchikeinu. If there's a sin in your hand, distance it. Ve'al tashkein b'holecha avla. Let there be no avla in your oihel. Ki oz tiso panecha mimum. Right, then you will be able to see Hashem without mum. V'hisa mutzak v'loy sira, and you will be steadfast, and you will never fear. So, okay, so he's saying a very interesting thing here. This is a very interesting paragraph. Okay, that we'll just have to keep file it away for the future, and that is that. Right, he's saying, so what is he saying? He's saying that if a person is able to cleanse himself from illegal dispossession, right, that's a huge madrega, even to the point that there could be many chassidim on many different levels, very saintly people, but they still have a little dirt of this problem, right? A little weakness towards illicit gains, right? Now, so what is he saying? So I could ask you the question like this: Can a person be a chassid before a person becomes a tzaddik? Right? Meaning, I would have said no. Why should you be? First cleanse yourself. Chassidus is an extra thing. Don't be a too frum, so to speak, before you cleanse yourself from these averos. What are you jumping into, like being this saintly individual? You haven't even cleansed yourself. That's what I would have said. And perhaps we're going to see. I think we're going to see places. I think we've seen places already where it in the beginning, in the introduction, in the Hagdama. I mean, he talked about it. It seemed that you can't be a chassid before you become a tzaddik. But from this line, at least from this line, it seems, it's possible to be, so there's branches of Hasidus. So it's possible to be very far along in one branch and not be so far along in another branch.
Okay.
Right? That's what this particular quote tells us. Okay, V'hinei dibarti ad heina, so until now I spoke, miproti mitzvah achas min ha-mitzvahs, only with regards to one mitzvah, which is Gezel. Again, not exactly true, because he showed us that there's like 7 different averos within Gezel, but he's trying to make a point that I only covered one mitzvah. You have to realize that just like I was able to drill down so much with just one mitzvah, you have to realize that there's so many ways to drill down in every single mitzvah. I'm only the one talking about the ones that people are habitually stumbling with, right? So he's mentioning the problems of he's giving musar to his, to the people of his generation. That's basically what he's doing here, right? This is why this becomes a musar book, because this is a musar book. So he says this is, again, I'm not sure if his generation. I really made a conjecture, his generation, but maybe these are objectively weak spots for all humans. Okay, what's the time? Okay, all right. So let's just I don't know. Okay, so that's it for Gezel. Now he's going to start V'ndaber atam in Arais. Now he's going to go into Arais. So we'll get to Arais, I guess, next time. I just want to point out, right? We're coming off Purim, so famous distinction between the decree of Amalek. Well, in general, we say in Alanisim, we say lehashmid laharogu la'abed, right? That the Haman wanted to lehashmid laharogu la'abed, right? Which is a very strong language that he wanted to destroy, to kill, to destroy, to eradicate, like very strong language. In other words, Haman didn't want to just wipe out Jews. He wanted to really eradicate the whole, what he felt was the ideology of the Jewish people, right? And that was the initial decree. Meaning, it's not like we say by Lovan, right? By Pesach we say Lovan, he really wanted to destroy everything. Nowhere does it say that Lovan wanted to destroy everything. we figure out kind of his sub intentions based on certain phraseology that he said, right? By Haman, it's not like that. No, Haman specific, that language, lahashmit, laharagul, abed, was the language of the actual decree, right? The way it's presented in the Megillah. In other words, that's his intention was to destroy the very nature of Klal Yisrael, right? In other words, I would say the very same way we want to destroy Amalek, right? He wanted to destroy us. In his world, we're his Amalek. In Amalek's world, the Jews are the Amalek, and they need to be destroyed, right? But what's the problem? The problem is in the decree it's also Shlolim Lavois, but their goods, their stuff, you possess. You kill and destroy, eradicate their what they stand for, but make sure you pick up as much of their property as possible, right? So when they ask you, whose cup is this? Oh, this was a Jewish cup. Remember Jews, people who stood for honesty in business? Oh, that's their cup. That's counterintuitive. What are you doing? Aren't you trying to eradicate lahashmid, lahabed, lahareg, right? To eradicate everything they stand for? The answer is, it's motivated by greed also. Meaning, yes, it's true. It's philosophy. It's I want to destroy what they stand for, but I want to make some money in the process too, right? On the other hand, when the Jews came out against, right, the Megillah makes a very, very clear point. They did not touch their goods. They fought their enemies, but they would not touch their belongings. They didn't want anything to do with their way of life, so to speak, right? And similarly, similarly by Parai, right? Coming to Pesach now, Parai says, these are our enemies. Let's kill them. Well, let's just kill the boys, but not the girls. Why isn't he killing the girls? Because he wants the girls, right? He has taiva for the girls, so why not? Figures out, okay, we justify, we rationalize on how to keep the girls for ourselves, right? So again, it's the same idea, so to speak, where the result, right, the decree of both Parai and Haman, they show kind of the real motivation. One is motivated by greed, the other one is motivated by taiva, right? Okay. Yeah.
Shaul also was motivated, right?
Show that he did not
Kill all the animals, and he had a righteous motivation, right?
It's not exactly the same as taiva because they did not keep it for themselves. It was slightly different over there,
right?
Because over there was more like they felt like baltashkis. Right. It's like why destroy it when you could elevate it, Not exactly baltashkis, but we don't have a sense for this.
Not for profit taiva.
It's. I don't think we have a sense of this. It's like in the olden days. I think in the olden days when they had such reverence for kings, for royalty, for aristocracy, to just kill them like they do in the French guillotine in the French Revolution. That was like it was such a picorsus. It just you couldn't bring yourself to do it. How could you? The very refined, beautiful royalty that's like angelic, and you're just gonna like kill it like a common dog. It just didn't sit well in their worldview, So I think that's how I understood it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.